Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so there's actually a trial that starts next week,
Right, October 16th.
and it's NAR, National Association of Realtors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a class action suit. We're not going to go into a lot of detail, other than we're going to talk about what are the things that they're arguing, and
Right.
from our perspective.
So this is the big, from our perspective, the big trial of the decade regarding the National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice. So they, not only is NAR involved, but there are other parties involved. So for example, Anywhere was involved, and Keller Williams is involved, and lots of other brokerages. But so the bottom line of it is that the DOJ alleges that because of NAR's rules and because of NAR's code of ethics, that is causing less competition, and it's causing higher prices when selling a home, and that somehow this is causing harm to consumer.
Yeah.
Our take on it is a little bit different than
Well,
that.
let's go through it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So here's the first part. NAR heads to trial in Kansas City, Missouri, to present facts law about pro-consumer, pro-competition rules. This is actually a civil case. And so it's, what's the, before I read the next thing, what is the basis? Why are they suing? What are they claiming? The complainants.
Okay, so the complainants are claiming that when they listed their home for sale, they did not know, bless their hearts, that part of the commission was being paid to the buyer's agent. So let me give you an example. You list your home for sale, and you agree to pay your listing broker X number of bananas, and that listing broker shares some portion of those bananas with the buyer's agent. And the seller is alleging that he had no idea that the buyer's broker was being paid from the listing broker's commission. Now, I want to point out that the seller agreed to pay the listing broker. How the listing broker chooses to spend the money to get the house sold is up to the listing broker. And the DOJ is saying, not so fast. You can spend the money any way you want, but not on other agents.
Okay. So in the trial set to begin October 16th, with a verdict expected by November 10th, plaintiffs allege commission rates are too high. Buyer brokers are being paid too much, and NAR's Code of Ethics and MLS Handbook, along with the corporate defendants' practices, lead to set pricing. This case covers the Kansas City, Missouri, St. Louis, Springfield, and Columbus markets. This is a civil case. This is some people who got together to do a class action suit in these specific markets. They originally only are suing the Realtor Association as a whole, and then a couple franchises. Remax, Anywhere, which is used to be called Realogy, which is like Century 21, ERA, and a bunch of companies, Keller Williams, and another one. But two of them have settled for like 50, 60 million each. Right. So they're out. They can't be sued anymore.
So, but we need to give that some context. So when they're settling for X amount of millions of dollars each, what that actually boils down to is several $100s per agent. So it sounds like a lot of money, but when you consider how many agents they have and what the cost per agent is, it's actually pretty nominal. So that does need to be understood. Yeah,
so I'll give you an example. $50 million is the amount that one of the largest franchises settled for, 46 million or something. This was Anywhere. So remember, this is a bunch of different franchises: Century 21, ERA, Sotheby's, like I think Corcoran's in there, and some other ones, right? Just remember, commissions paid to real estate agents is on the order of about it's 100 billion a year. There's $2 trillion in real estate that transacted every year. So there's $100 billion. So this ends up being extremely small amount of the total. And this is a one-time thing. That's per year, $100 billion.
Right. So the amount for which they settled was was very nominal on a per agent basis.
It's half of 1,000th of 1 year's commission income to any of these companies, basically. Okay, so what we're going to do is talk about the specifics of what NAR is saying. That, hey, this doesn't really, we'll go through these in detail. Okay, first one, compensation is set between brokers and their clients is always negotiable.
Absolutely. So, as a broker, I see lots of different compensation models. So sometimes it's the compensation is split evenly between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's a sliding scale. So let me give you an example. So let's say that we agree that we're going to list your house for X number of bananas, but if there isn't a buyer's agent from another brokerage involved, then maybe we're going to do it for Y bananas. And maybe if there isn't any other agent involved except the listing agent, so listing agent represents both the buyer and the seller, then maybe it's for Z bananas. So, there's a lot of flexibility there. And part of it depends on what services are provided. There are lots of different compensation models. There are flat fee brokerages out there, percentage brokerages that charge both a percentage and a flat fee. So let me give you an example. So for example, there are brokerages out there that charge you X percent for listing your home, and then they also charge you a transaction fee or maybe a marketing fee. Maybe they have a cancellation fee. So there are all kinds of different compensation models out there. So the claim that somehow there's price fixing involved is really not well substantiated.
Do you know there's price fixing? Ferrari dealerships. I went to the Ferrari dealerships and wanted to spend $40,000 to $50,000 for a brand new Ferrari, but they all refused to sell me a car unless it was $250,000. And I'm like, you're all price fixing.
Right.
That's absolutely price. When you're all saying the exact same amount, that's price fixing.
Right. And then the other claim, as Todd mentioned, was that somehow buyer's agents are overcompensated. So that's what the marketplace will support. Now, are buyer's agents overcompensated? I personally don't think so, because when you consider what a buyer's agent does, they do work very hard. They scour the market for homes that fit your criteria. They take you to lots of homes. Maybe they connect you with a lender. They attend home inspections. They help you maybe challenge an appraisal value. They work to help you get estimates for repairs. They do lots of work, and all of that work is a lot of time. That is time that they spend on your transaction that they cannot spend with another client. So all of that time is worth money, and they are compensated for that. But again, they are compensated per an agreement with the listing agent. That's between them.
Sellers do not seem to have a problem with wanting to not pay anything, have you do a bunch of work for free, and then if they want to cancel, they're not out anything. If you flip the model and said, okay, fine, I won't charge you a percentage commission. I will bill you hourly, which you'll pay me up front. And then if your house never sells or you decide to take your house off the market, that's fine, I got paid. So you'll pay me X per hour. Oh, and then you'll pay for everything. So that lockbox I'm putting on the house, you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for my photographer to come. You're going to pay for the marketing that I'm going to do. The virtual tour company, you're going to pay for a bunch of stuff. And then, over time, depending on how long, how many offers we get, you'll just basically keep paying money out. So that's another way you could do it, right? So you don't have to do this whole idea where you have to do it. That's the easiest way. It's just the easiest way for everybody. So let's go.
Well, so here's the thing. This is actually the most economic way for buyers and sellers to deal with compensating agents for their services. Because here's under your scenario, Todd, you could list, Mr. Seller could list his house, and he could be out thousands of dollars, and the house never sold, and yet it cost him thousands of dollars. The way it works now, if the house doesn't sell, Mr. Seller is usually not out any money. It's the agent who's out a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time and a whole lot of lost opportunity. So, if the DOJ and the judge decide that agents should get paid, on a pay-as-you-go, then you know what? That's fine. The thing is that sellers are going to find that it's very expensive to sell a home in that way because that money has to be paid up front. So the way it works right now is the money is paid at closing and nothing is generally out of pocket from the seller. But the way it could work is everything could be out of pocket, both from the seller and the buyer. And, I don't think that the buying public would like that. I don't think that's consumer friendly.
Okay, commission rates are market driven and have fluctuated over time. Those costs are spelled out to buyers and sellers, and NAR doesn't tell anyone what to charge. That's the truth, right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there are strict rules about not colluding regarding what we charge. And it's not just in the real estate industry. It's in a lot of industries that there are strict rules about not colluding.
Okay. The next quote that NARs point is there's incredible value in using a real estate agent, especially a realtor, when you buy or sell your home. There was back when they used to have for sale by owners, somebody had, NAR, I guess, pulled a bunch of data. This was in the 90s, really before
the internet and all that.
The internet. And they had found that if you sold it without an agent, you averaged anywhere from 86 to 92% of what an agent would get you. Mm-hmm. And so that was, yeah.
Right. So look, an agent is able to market your home effectively because they know what buyers are looking for in your market. They're able to provide a lot of services, a lot of counseling, advice about positioning your home on the market, about the type of marketing to be done, about a whole host of things that your typical home seller simply doesn't have experience with. Even if you've sold half a dozen homes, the market changes all the time, and it's not reasonable for you to be able to keep up with that. It is reasonable that a professional is able to keep up with that and is able to give you sound advice.
So here's some reasons why NAR says it would be bad to get rid of the current model or to basically force it to go away, which I don't think is going to happen, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, here's the first one. It would lead to increased out-of-pocket expenses for buyers and threaten their ability to afford a home and professional representation want it. If the buyer had to pay out of pocket every time they saw a home for the consultation, for the time of the agent, just the whole thing, they were digging into money they may need for down payment.
Right. So here's what would actually happen in the real world, right? So the buyer goes out and says, hey, I want to buy a house. Agent says, no problem. Buyer says, hey, but I don't have any money. Agent says, don't sweat it. We'll work it out. And here's the way this game's going to work. We're going to show you lots of houses, but in order for us to do that, we're going to have a buyer-broker agreement where you agree to pay me this many bananas when you buy a house. And the buyer says, but I don't have that money. Agent says, don't sweat it. You're going to get to finance it, or we'll get the seller to pay for it. Either way, it'll work out. They go out, they find a house, they put an offer in on it, and part of that offer is, Mr. Seller, guess what? You get to pay off the buyer's buyer-broker agreement. And if Mr. Seller, you're not okay with that, then Mr. Buyer, you're going to have to finance that if you don't have the money. And Mr. Lender, you're going to have to find a way to make that thing work. Look, the market will figure it out. That's the bottom line. And under the scenario that I just mentioned, it's basically what happens now. The seller is still kind of sort of on the hook for it, right? Right now what happens is the seller is on the hook for paying his listing agent, and the listing agent shares that commission with the buyer's agent. So under the scenario that I just mentioned, the seller is still paying for the buyer's agent through paying closing costs. It's still the same thing. It's just semantics. I don't know that solves the problem. The problem is that everybody should have their own representation. Everybody should have a capable realtor helping them, guiding them, and advising them. And in order to do that, these people have to get paid. I mean, as much as we love our clients, we all have bills to pay and food to put on the table, and we need to get paid for our services.
Here's another quote. Sellers would have fueled potential buyers seeing their homes. How much does it cost the seller if that one buyer that would have paid the most money never sees the house and they end up having to sell it to some other person because there's less people looking. I mean, isn't that ultimately how a
Right.
marketplace works, right?
Yes, yes. So you may think, well, no, I mean, there are not going to be less buyers looking because that listing agent's going to show the property. Maybe, maybe not. That's left to be seen. And at the same time, you can't run around that listing agent every time somebody wants to see a house. I mean,
Why would the agent do it if they're not getting paid a commission? Like, wait, you want me to just show up every time? Oh, I'd say, okay, it's $500 every time I show up at your house. I stop working, I drive to there, I wait for the person to show up, they see the house and they leave. It's $500 each time. You're going to pay me that. I'm going to bill you at the end of each week. You're going to write a check and give me a check.
well,
And I'm going to do it like an attorney does. You're going to write a $10,000 retainer check, and then I'll just take money out of that. And then at the end of 2 weeks, when I'll say you do more money because I've been doing all this work and doing all this stuff.
right.
People would be like, why don't I just pay you at the end, like a percentage of the whole thing? No, we can't do that anymore because we did it that way and you didn't want to do it that way.
Right. So property management works that way, right? We have owners' reserves. We spend the owners' reserves money, and then the owners replenish those reserves before we can spend more money. And that's the way this would work. You would list your house. You would pay an upfront reserve fee for services for whatever period of time. And then when those funds get below a certain level, you have to replenish those funds. So that's the way it would work. So it would be out-of-pocket costs throughout the transaction for the seller. There would be possibly out-of-pocket costs throughout the transaction for the buyer as well. So honestly, it would just be much more cumbersome for everyone. There'd be more accounting involved, and it would be more costly all the way around. What's your next point?
Next point, small brokerages and small businesses would have more difficulty competing with larger brokerages. Likely many would go out of business. So the idea here is that everyone pays to be part of this MLS, and then we all have the same equal ability. And what would happen is brokerages we would go back to brokerages having only their listings on their website. So you'd have to go to that brokerage, and then those smaller brokerages, like why would you want to go to like 80 different websites to find all the houses? And remember, if you say, you would go to Zillow, Zillow wouldn't have all the listings anymore because Zillow it has a pull from the MLS. So now you're assuming all the brokers would now want to put all their stuff on Zillow. Actually, this would be terrible for Zillow. They'd probably go away because the problem is now they wouldn't have all the listings, because if I'm a small brokerage, I'm not going to put my listing on Zillow. Why do I care? Why do I care if it sells? Actually want it? I'm better off if it never sells. Do you know why?
Because I get to collect fees the whole time.
Because I get to collect fees the whole time. It's just like your attorney. He doesn't want to settle your suit. He wants to keep going. So I would just say, hey, we haven't sold yet. Well, why isn't it on this Zillow website? Well, because I'm not going to put it on there. It doesn't, why would I put it on there if I'm not earning a commission for selling the house? You're just wanting me to pay you a monthly fee. So the model, fragmenting the model under the guise that it's people are overpaying or whatever. The average take home for a realtor is like $46,000 a year or something. That doesn't sound
right. So look, right now the way the market works, it's pretty efficient. What they're proposing is something completely inefficient, and that costs money. Inefficiency ultimately costs the consumer money. You want to go to the next point?
Yeah. A fracturing of local MLS broker marketplaces as we know it would lead to a disorganized market, piecemeal approach to finding properties for sale, and less reliability in the information available on properties for sale.
Right, which is harmful to the consumer.
That's what we said, basically. So now, personally, I don't really care because the bottom line is whatever they decide in this suit, it's a moot point. And this is why. This is just about money. They're just going to extract a settlement from NAR. Worst case scenario is NAR gets this massive fine. NAR will then declare bankruptcy, right? Mm-hmm. And then a new organization will magically appear that everyone will probably join to pay dues to, so that they can, have a electronic MLS so we can share all the data and do things the same way we've been doing. And it'll just be called the National Association of Real Estate Professionals, or Realtists, or some other made up word. They'll make up a word. And NAR won't be able to assess its members because the members will all quit. So if NAR came to us and said, hey, you have to pay $10,000, that's your share of the thing, we'd just be like, we're quitting NAR. We don't need to be a realtor. We'll just quit. Oh, the other thing, without the Realtor Association, there's no code of ethics anymore.
Right. So here's the thing about the code of ethics. The code of ethics is very, very important because that governs the practice of real estate practitioners that are members of the National Association of Realtors, and it is actually very strict. It is actually so strict that a lot of times the regulatory bodies in the different states defer to the Board of Realtors to discipline its members rather than having the regulatory body discipline them, because the discipline that the Board of Realtors provides is actually more stringent than what the regulatory bodies do. Now, without the code of ethics, that would open the door for regulatory bodies to enact all sorts of rules and have a much tighter rein on realtors. It would also open the door for legislative bodies to have all kinds of laws. And then you'd have this whole patchwork of different laws, regulations, and ways of doing business across the country, depending on where you are. And you may think, well, what's the big deal? Well, here's what the big deal is. First of all, from a consumer standpoint, you would have a completely different experience depending on where you were. Next, even if you were to sell properties in the same state, if it was with not in the same particular jurisdiction, you might have different contracts to look at. You might get in a position where maybe if you're in different states, it's just completely different rules to where there are no similarities. It makes it much more difficult for consumers. The other portion that would happen is you'd be placed in a position to maybe having to have an attorney look at everything, and that makes it more expensive. That makes it more time consuming. I'm not anti-attorneys, but I am pro-efficiency and pro-consumer. It is not consumer friendly to get attorneys involved. If you ever read something an attorney wrote, your eyes kind of glaze over and you go, forget it. I don't understand any of it. And so the language that they use is not accessible to most consumers, because you have to understand that not all consumers have an MBA or a law degree. So not everyone is really able to fully digest these contracts. Yep. The ones that are provided by the Board of Realtors, great pains is taken to make them in plain language that are easily, or at least relatively easily, understood by the general public. Attorneys have never made an effort for that in their lives. So, and it's not in their interest. So leave us comments. Remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and like I said, subscribe so that you can get more videos, and you can and we will keep you updated with the NAR lawsuit.
Yep.
See you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.